Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, who you no doubt had not heard of until a couple days ago, he spent the first week of his 2 week Senate recess risking his life to try to bring home Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Virginia's senior senator, Mark Warner, was puttering around the state last week, doing grip and grins with locals around the occasional roundtable discussion about important things, supposedly. Tim Kaine, our junior senator, spent his week traipsing around Europe. He did make a stop in Ukraine, and that's not nothing. But still, the advantage here goes obviously to Chris Van Hollen. And I've got a lengthy quote here from his press conference last Friday. As the federal courts have said, we need to bring Mr. Abrego Garcia home to protect his constitutional rights to due process. It's also important that people understand this case is not just about one man. It's about protecting the rights of everybody who resides in the United States of America. If you deny the constitutional right of one man, you threaten the constitutional rights and due process for everyone else in America. If you're not familiar for some reason, if you clicked on this and you're not familiar with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, he's a Salvadoran citizen who fled political violence in his native country in 2011, is a resident of Maryland, married to a U.S. citizen, a father of three, and then was, for no reason that any of us can determine, except by accident, was plucked from his car, put on a plane, and sent to El Salvador in a gulag to spend the rest of his days, as far as the Trump administration is concerned. The way things are going with this stuff right now, I don't know that we would have been surprised to hear that the Salvadorans would have just locked up Chris Van Hollen in a cell beside Kilmar Abrego Garcia and decided that he's in prison for the rest of his life. I mean, consider there that Donald Trump's official response to the news that prison officials in El Salvador have moved Abrego Garcia from the notorious Gulag, it's the initials are CCOT, to a detention center outside the country's capital. It was to post a doctored photo of Abrego Garcia's hand, making it look like he had an MS-13 tattoo on his fingers on his left hand. And then also to complain on social media that Chris Van Hollen is a grandstander, all caps. Donald Trump calling anyone else a grandstander, quite interesting. And this all as we're learning more about why El Salvador's president, a guy named Nayib Bukele, has interest in working with the Trump administration to offshore Trump's political prisoners. A piece in the New Yorker published late last week details the deep ties between the Bukele regime and MS-13. Okay, so we're supposedly anti-MS-13. Bukele supposedly is anti-MS-13, but he's got a close working relationship. And this relationship has the leaders of that gang demanding financial benefits, control of territory, less restrictive prison conditions, legislative and judicial changes, and a promise from the president to refuse to extradite gang members from the U.S. for prosecution in exchange for them agreeing basically to kill less people. Okay. What a deal. Hey, you give us all these things and we won't kill as many people, which, quote, according to the article, quote, politically benefited the government of El Salvador by creating the perception that the government was reducing the murder rate. Okay, so quid pro quo, as we like to say. Now, Trump thinks he has this Bukele guy over a barrel, so he's getting the president of the tiny, impoverished Latin American nation. Population just 6.3 million. There are a number of U.S. cities with bigger populations than this country. The average monthly family income in El Salvador, $700.94. Impoverished country. And Trump has agreed, without congressional approval, I might add, to pay $15 million to El Salvador just for 1 year of holding U.S. prisoners. He's getting this guy to do his dirty work. The way these kind of things tend to work out, it won't take much for cracks in their unholy alliance to appear. And we may have just seen the first one. Van Hollen went to El Salvador last week to try to meet with Abrego Garcia. Was told for a couple of days he would not be able to. In fact, was in a car heading back to the airport to fly back to the U.S. Had to turn around after getting a phone call from El Salvadoran officials saying, "Yeah, you can meet with him now. We'll bring him over to your hotel." This is what the job of being a U.S. senator requires. You got to put yourself in the line of fire. Our guys, Tim Kaine, Mark Warner, they need to take note here. I'm all for our senators traipsing around the state to meet with constituent groups and backpacking through Europe. But in the here and now, the biggest concern has to be Trump 2.0 is getting away with disappearing somebody. How long is it, if that is allowed to take place, before the rest of us are treated with the same kind of approach?